to the second video of understanding monetary policy and fiscal policy, guys. Last video, we looked more into the monetary side of the policy, and we saw that it was just how basically the central bank controls the money supply of the economy, so that it's not too high or too low, because too high would cause too much inflation and lower exchange rates. And then if it was too low, we'd have better inflation and better exchange rates, but we'd have a low GDP per capita. Okay, so but enough of that on monetary policy. Today we're going to be working on fiscal policy. And guys, remember when we talk about fiscal policy, I said to you, it's everything basically done by the government, guys. It's the stuff done. It's basically the reason the government taxes us, guys. They don't just tax us because they want to take money from us. It's because they want to do stuff to actually improve the infrastructure of economy. So let's go into fiscal policy. Okay, so the first thing is that it's controlled by the government, guys. Very important to remember. Remember, monetary is controlled by the central bank. This is controlled by the government, guys. It handles the supply in the long term and the demand side of the economy in the short term. Okay, guys, and what that means is that initially all the stuff that the government does are all in fiscal policy to affect the behavior of our economy, guys. It all affects the demand initially, guys, is that when they decide to increase taxes or decrease taxes, it's going to affect the demand. It's not going to affect the supply. The reason we say it handles the supply in long term, guys, is because when you're looking at stuff like if they put in money towards education or medicine, guys, is that it handles the supply in the long term, because people are going to become more skilled through education and stuff, so it's going to help increase the efficiency of the economy later in time. Again, we have two types, guys. We have expansionary and we have contradictory, guys. Remember, it's the same as monetary. We have expansionary, the one where we're looking to increase our GDP in our economy, and then we have contradictory, which is normally the one that's there to make sure that the other stuff doesn't get out of hand, like inflation and exchange rate. Not that exchange rate comes much into play when dealing with fiscal policy. And then the last one is that the government tries to find an equilibrium between taxation and spending, guys. They want to find that perfect point that they can tax people, that they need this amount of money to do the spending that they want this year, but they need to basically take it into account, because if you're taxing the people too much, then people don't have enough money to spend on everyday stuff, guys. So it's a very fine line between taxation and spending, and governments get it wrong all the time. They're always working to try to get that equilibrium going. Okay, so let's talk about expansionary fiscal policy, guys. It basically gives the population more purchasing power, guys, okay? And I'll explain why that is now when I go into the next point. And it's done by reducing taxation and increasing subsidies, guys. So just so that you guys know, okay, so taxation, it's that bit of money the government takes off every month due to either you have corporation taxes, you have income taxes, you have lots of different types of taxes. So they do this by reducing the amount of taxes that they employing on businesses and people, and they increase the subsidies. So they give businesses more money to increase this supply, guys. They want businesses to be doing better than ever. So that's why there's more purchasing power, because suddenly everyone has more money. The government's not taking away as much money from taxes, so that means they have more money to spend every month. So the whole population gets more purchasing power. See why I say it's demand side, guys. The next one, it's also done by increasing spending to increase jobs and therefore decrease unemployment, okay? So not only have they reduced taxes and give everyone more money, so they're not getting as much money, but now they're also deciding that they're going to increase the amount that they're spending, guys. So this is like they'll increase spending on education, hospitals, policing, all that type of stuff, because first of all, it increases jobs. So it lowers unemployment, but it also helps the infrastructure of your economy. So in the long term, it's going to help your aggregate supply. So going back to it, remember how I said that it affects the demand in the short term and the supply in the long term? That's a good point, is that in the short term, your demand's going to go up, but in the long term, your aggregate supply is going to go up, guys, okay? Because people are going to become more efficient. Okay, another one is that they reduce corporate taxes in the hope of reinvestment. So they stop taxing businesses as much, guys, because they want businesses to take all the extra profits they get from not being taxed and put it back into the business and use that money to create more jobs and create the efficiency and make us more globally competitive with the rest of the world. So that's one of the reasons. So going into these last points, it looks to increase aggregate demand in the short term. So that's going to all of it, the reducing the taxation, the increasing subsidies, guys. You're giving people more money. So when people have more money, they demand more, guys. So it increases the aggregate demand. And then it looks to increase the aggregate supply in the long term, guys. That's the reason government spends money on what's infrastructure. It's to increase our aggregate supply. It's so that one day we are performing at a better global GDP than we were in the past, guys. And just remember, expansionary fiscal policy is looking at expanding our GDP, guys. That's the main reason for expansionary fiscal policy. Now let's look at contradictory fiscal policy. Okay, guys. Contradictory, I just want to go into this so that basically, in terms of economic growth, guys, expansionary policy is the best way for economic growth. But the issue with it is that, as I was speaking about there, is that they're decreasing taxation and they're increasing spending. So it means they're spending more money, but they're also getting back less money, guys. So how can they keep spending more money, guys? They can't, guys. Is that eventually they get to the point where, oh no, we've used all of our reserves, okay, it's time to start increasing taxation again, decrease government spending so that so that the government has time to re-get that money to use on expansionary policy. So contradictory is you increase in taxation and decrease government spending. You'll also decrease subsidies. I didn't put that in there, but you would. So guys, this is basically how they get back all their money that they've spent a lot of money in the last when they were using expansionary. Now they need to bring it back. And this lowers the amount of purchasing power to the population, because I didn't mention it earlier, but the issue with high purchasing power and the issue with a forever increasing demand is that you get very high inflationary pressures, guys. Is that, remember, the higher the demand, the higher the price is going to be, guys. So it's going to if we keep increasing our aggregate demand, inflation is going to start growing at a very, very high rate. So that's another reason why we use contradictory policies, so that inflation doesn't get out of hand. So if we use expansionary for too long, inflation is going to get out of hand, and then we're going to be in a worse place than we were initially. So that's why we use contradictory, and it needs to be put in place to prevent overspending. So that's what I was talking about earlier, guys, is that they need to do this, because otherwise they're just going to keep taking money from the reserves, guys, and then when we run out of money from the reserves, then we're in trouble, guys. So they do this so that each year they can make sure that they're getting in as much money as that they're spending out during expansionary policy. Okay, guys, I hope this was helpful in terms of understanding monetary and fiscal, and I hope next time you hear it going on in the news, you have a bit more idea about what's going on. Thanks for joining us, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow.